Recently, I've been seeing a lot of people complaining about how the Hulk's been portrayed in the recent MCU. He started out as a badass shirtless rage monster using cars as frickin' boxing gloves to fight in the streets of Harlem. While nowadays, he's just some middle-aged green guy awkwardly introducing his hippie son at a family barbecue. Sure, with a well-written character arc, this kind of change could be compelling and emotionally satisfying over time, but that's not something we really ever got with the Hulk. Well, with most of the other main heroes, we got to see the major moments that changed and defined them across the MCU. With Bruce Banner, almost every single important moment that changed and defined him was done off screen. And the more I thought about this, the more I realized that this issue actually started in his very first movie, and literally in the very first scene when they decided to skip over his origin story. When they made The Incredible Hulk, there had just been a Hulk movie a few years earlier that took an arduous amount of time on an origin. So they felt that audiences wouldn't want to see one again and just glossed over it in the opening credits. We quickly see Bruce doing some experiments, things go wrong, he becomes the Hulk and goes on the run. We don't really know what Bruce was like before he became the Hulk though. We learn bits and pieces. He was doing experiments to make people immune to gamma radiation. He had relationships with Betty, but we don't learn a lot about what his personality was like and how he's changed since becoming the Hulk. With Tony, Steve, and Thor, we got to know what they were like before their origins and contrast it with the heroes they became after. This taught the audience a lot about the characters and deeply endeared them to us and gave the writers a groundwork to build off of in the arcs across the entire MCU. But with the Hulk, we didn't get any of that. When we first meet him, Bruce is already on the run and spends the majority of the film trying to cure himself and learn to keep control so he won't transform. But since we don't know what he was like before, we're not watching a character arc. We're just watching stuff happen to the guy. Did he have anger issues in his past that he's needing to grapple with? Or was he just a normal, well-adjusted guy who's needing to learn a skill he never knew existed? Is the Hulk a part of something hidden in his subconscious that was always threatening to come out? Or is it a completely foreign element he must now learn to control? We don't know. Unlike the other main heroes, we don't learn a lot about this guy except that he, seems pretty nice and he's got a Hulk in him that he wants to get out. This is like if we skipped Tony selling weapons and building armor in a cave and started the movie when he comes back to America. We'd be told a bit about how he used to be, but we wouldn't have seen much of how he's changed. He'd just be a cool guy who made an Iron Man armor to fight bad guys, and I feel the character would have been a lot less compelling across the MCU. The big character-defining moment in this movie is when Bruce embraces the Hulk to stop Abomination's rampage. We've seen him running from being used as a weapon to using that weapon to try to stop a villain, and that's pretty interesting. But it would have been a lot more interesting if we'd seen Bruce's horror at the destruction the Hulk had caused in the past during his first transformation. And we'd seen him having an antagonistic relationship with the Hulk, and the Hulk hating Bruce, always keeping him inside. We got a teeny bit of that, but if we'd gotten a full origin instead of just the second half of one, these are things the movie would have had to explore, and it would have been very, very interesting. The moment he finally chooses to be the Hulk would have been incredibly impactful. Instead, it's like if we'd watched Thor finally lift the hammer to stop the Destroyer armor without having seen what he was like before he was banished from Asgard. Avengers recognized how little character work had actually been done on Bruce, so a large chunk of the movie was dedicated to showing Bruce grappling with his anger and expressing guilt and worry over what his Hulk side is capable of. It also does continue some of the plot threads from the previous movie, like him embracing his anger to keep control and being distrustful of what authority figures want from his other half. At the end of the movie, we see that Tony and Bruce have bonded, and that's continued into Age of Ultron with them working together. But there's another plot line in Age of Ultron that came out of nowhere and was very divisive. Bruce's relationship with Black Widow. Some people really loved them coming together in the movie. Others absolutely detested it, and plenty of people were indifferent. But really, if it was good or bad is just a matter of opinion. Because in setting up this relationship, there's a very important question for the character that they had just glossed over again. Where the hell is Betty? Last we saw Bruce and Betty were deeply in love, and Hulk seemed to share a similar feeling for her as well. As soon as he re-entered her life, she dropped everything to help and be with him. Hulk had fled at the end of the movie, but that doesn't mean those feelings had just left. And it's not like the writers forgot about her. The Hulkbuster platform Bruce and Tony developed together is called Veronica, a clear reference to Betty and Veronica from Archie Comics. Bruce begins a relationship with Natasha in this movie, but whatever development could have happened that would have caused him to just forget about Betty apparently happened off screen. Does he believe being with Betty endangers her too much and is moving on for her own good to someone who already lives with that kind of danger? Did he and Betty just drift apart because of how much he's changed across the years? Is she straight up dead? We have no clue and can only guess. Another pivotal and character-defining moment that just apparently happened off-screen. We didn't see every moment of Tony and Pepper's relationship, but we saw all the major moments running across the movies. Because we understand his relationship to Pepper so well, it lets us understand Tony even better. Same with Thor and Jane and Cap and Peggy. When they weren't sure if they were going to be able to get Gwyneth Paltrow and Natalie Portman back, they made sure to slip in a line about how they were having relationship issues, because they knew fans would wonder about their absence. But with Bruce, we spend a whole movie following him and Betty being deeply in love, and now he's just dropped her without any explanation to start hooking up with a hot new girl like he's frickin' James Bond. How are viewers supposed to be invested in this new romance without even a single line about the last one? Either Bruce has been through something heartbreaking and we should feel sympathy for him, or he's a two-timing scumbag and we should be pissed at him. But they don't tell us which it is. We're just left to guess, and the character feels disjointed. After he leaves at the end of Age of Ultron, the next time we see him is when Thor encounters him on Sakaar. After his freakout in Age of Ultron, Hulk has found a place he can just be the Hulk and be rewarded for it, where his strength and rage can thrive, and he's risen to be the strongest fighter on the planet. It's a shame we didn't get to see him acclimate to this new life and fight his way to the top, but as a continuation of the character arc for Hulk, it works just fine. But here's the problem. When Hulk eventually transforms back into Bruce, it's a version of Banner that acts very different than we've seen him act previously. In all his previous appearances, Bruce is consistently very calm, soft-spoken, and self-serious. But in Ragnarok, he's pretty manic, loud, and kind of funny, just like everyone else in the movie is. There's a lot more improv in this film than usual at the time for MCU movies, and a lot of the fun of it was on account of the actor's unfiltered charisma. Now, Thor was already very loud and boisterous, and Loki was already magnetically charismatic. So, for these characters, it was easy to see these elements of their personalities as continuing from how they'd previously been portrayed. But for Bruce, this change feels out of nowhere. Characters can change drastically over time, that's fine. The problem is we didn't see this change. We just cut from Hulk flying away to fighting in the arena. We learned that Bruce has been Hulk for 2 years, so that can explain why he's disoriented at first, but not other changes in his characters. Maybe elements of Bruce's anger were drained by being channeled into the Hulk for so long. Maybe he's subconsciously allowed the Hulk to stay in control, and he's changed a bit while inside his own mind because of it. This new version of his personality continues into future movies, so whatever happened was clearly something pivotal to him as well. But again, we're just left to guess. Ragnarok leads directly into Infinity War, and we see a huge moment for the character when the Hulk is easily beaten for the first time in his life by Thanos. For the rest of the movie, when Banner tries to call out Hulk, Hulk refuses to transform. Hulk knows himself as the strongest there is, and now he's been made to feel weak. His ego's bruised, and he feels fear for the first time ever. Instead of shielding Bruce from harm, he's hiding inside Bruce. We don't know all the details of why he's doing this, and this is all conjecture, but it's a very interesting idea, and I'm sure many others were very curious to see how this would be resolved in the next film. But we don't get to see that resolution. Next time we see him, we're just told Banner and Hulk found balance off-screen between movies, and now Bruce is fully in control of Hulk's body. After a decade of fighting back and forth for control, they finally found harmony. And we didn't get to see that? Besides his origin, this may be the most important moment in Bruce's life, and they don't think that's an important enough arc to actually show us? Now, both Tony and Thor were also very different when we find them in Endgame, but we know exactly what happened to them between Infinity War and now. Thor lost his people and failed to stop Thanos. The guilt and shame make him feel unworthy, and he just gives up. Tony just barely survived, and now there's nothing left he can do. So he settles down with Pepper and tries to make the most of life. We don't need to see Thor eating a bunch of donuts or Tony consummating his marriage with Pepper to know what happened. But with Bruce, we really missed something here. He went from Hulk being scared to come out and fight Thanos again to Bruce's mind in Hulk's body casually dabbing in a restaurant. There was no setup, so the payoff of them finally coming together feels completely unearned. Did Hulk overcome his fear of giving up control just like Bruce did and it helped them bond? Did Bruce just take over and Hulk is still submerged and hiding inside? We don't know. We didn't see Hulk learn or overcome anything. We don't know if he even exists in there anymore at this point. And then we come to the modern day with She-Hulk. We learn that all this time, Bruce actually had a cousin. For a character who's always been portrayed as sad and alone, this is a pretty huge character change for the viewer, especially non-comic fans watching who were likely very surprised to learn Bruce even had family out there. So how do they introduce this new element in his life? They're just introduced driving in a car together as if they just have a normal relationship that we've never seen or heard about before now. Whatever led to this moment also happened off screen. Did they reconnect recently at some point after the blip? Have they been in contact for years? Whatever answer would tell us a lot about both Bruce and Jennifer. But we don't really learn much about their relationship except that they're cousins. She just suddenly exists as if she popped into existence right now. And apparently, Bruce developed a device that allows him to completely suppress turning into the Hulk off screen too. This is said casually, but it's a pretty major moment. All Bruce's life, he's tried to find a way to not become the Hulk, and he's finally invented one. And why does he have such a game-changing device? Well, it's definitely not just so that they can get into a car accident without Bruce turning into the Hulk and he can get a wound so blood will fall into Jennifer's wound as she tries to save his human body. That would be stupid and contrived. No. It's so he can heal his broken arm? Anyway, they get into a car accident and some of Bruce's blood falls into Jen's and she becomes a Hulk too. Bruce believes he'll need to train Jennifer to control her Hulk side, but it turns out she can already control it easily. And why is that? How can Jennifer control her Hulk side while Bruce took over a decade to learn such control? Well, I mean, obviously it's not because Jen's a lady. That would be stupid, and any writer who'd write something like that is obviously a completely self-absorbed narcissist and horrible sexist with no concept of the plight or internal worlds of other human beings. So what is the difference between them then? This could be a very interesting question to explore that could teach us a lot about both Bruce and Jennifer. But we can't explore that question because we still know almost nothing about Bruce's past before he became the Hulk. We didn't even know he had a cousin until right now. Had they laid the groundwork for the character of Bruce all the way back in the first movie, then a competent, non-sexist writer could have explored that here and now and really strongly solidified She-Hulk's character to the viewer in contrast to her cousin. But because they have nothing to work with, they could either spend a bunch of time fleshing out Bruce's past or just ignore the question altogether. And then, at the end of the show, we have the most egregious example of off-screen character development for Bruce with the introduction of his ugly-ass son. We didn't see his mother, we don't know why Hulk didn't know he existed, we didn't see them meet up, we have no idea how Bruce feels about him. Is he even Bruce's son if the Hulk was the one who, made him? Imagine what a complete shock it would be if you blacked out and impregnated someone and years later you found out you had a son. This may be the biggest thing added to his MCU continuity, and the kid doesn't even talk. It's just, yo guys, here's my son. I hate Thor having a made-up kid in Love and Thunder, but we saw exactly what led to him adopting her and raising her. With Hulk, yet again, we're only left to make up our own story off-screen. Now, I know there'll be someone out there saying, they'll explain all that in the next movie/show. But I don't know why you'd make that assumption. They've never elaborated on anything that's happened to this character between movies. I don't know why you think they'd start now. It's like the writers were told they had to introduce Hulk's son because they wanted him for Young Avengers or something. But the writers just didn't give a shit, so they tossed him in at the very last second. So, to ask again, how did the Hulk go from a pissed-off, gamma-infused badass who punches out spaceships and tosses gods around like ragdolls to a friendly suburban guy in a breezy shirt having hot dogs on the grill with his boy? Well, the answer is, we don't frickin' know. They never showed us. They just keep telling us about all these changes that happened off screen to get him to be whatever the current movie wants him to be, but we never actually get to see it. And for the most part, this isn't actually a problem with the Hulk. We haven't actually seen Hulk for like 7 years since Thanos kicked his ass. It's Bruce Banner who's been screwed over across the MCU. He's the one who keeps having the huge character growth moments off screen to make him fit whatever story the next movie wants him to be. Hulk, for the most part, is portrayed similarly in all his appearances. He's a big pissed off green guy. If the next movie has Hulk just pop out of Banner screaming like he's always done, I think people will cheer because it'll feel like we're finally continuing an arc that was left unfinished back in Infinity War when Hulk hid inside a Banner. Bruce Banner is one of my favorite characters in Marvel Comics, but in the MCU, I feel like we barely know the guy because we've only get glimpses of him here and there in other people's movies. Some of those glimpses are really, really well written, but when you line them all up next to each other, we don't get a clear character arc that really goes anywhere. From his past and the details of his experiments, to dumping Betty, to mastering the Hulk, to now having a cousin family and a son, these kinds of arcs are how we get to know and love a character. Tony, Cap, and Thor all got those kind of arcs. Even Hawkeye and Black Widow to a point. But not Bruce. Most of his life happens off screen, and we're left to just fill in the blanks. And when you're just tossing a character from project to project with no clear line between them, it just makes sense that eventually you're going to toss him to a show run by a bunch of idiots who don't give half a shit about him, and they'll turn him into this. So, how can they fix the modern Hulk? Well, with Leader Ross and I believe Betty all coming back for Captain America, they can toss in a line or two that could explain some of what we've missed across the movies. And I mean, I'd appreciate that, but I doubt most people will care or, bother to even watch that movie anyways. I think the real way to fix it is pretty simple. The Avengers are fighting Dr. Doom, and Bruce must revert to his stronger classic version of the Hulk to fight him. Doom tosses Hulk into a portal to another Earth, and Hulk goes on a crazed rampage. We see a man walk by, drop a cigar to the ground, and pop his claws, and boom! boom, teaser for Hulk versus Wolverine in Secret Wars. Cheap, lazy, desperate, yeah. Doesn't really account for Bruce, yeah. But I think sadly Bruce may be a lost cause at this point, so might as well just toss some cool superficial crap at people and try to make some money again. Anyway, sun's getting real low, big guy. No more nerd rage for today. And as much bad stuff has been coming out, it actually seems like things may actually be getting a little better soon. Daredevil looks pretty badass, and I'm actually tentatively optimistic for Superman after Creature Commandos. So whether it's stuff that's gonna piss us all off or stuff that's gonna be freaking awesome, click that subscribe button and we'll yell or cheer about it together. Until then, Hulk just wanna be left alone.